everyone. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him at Ford Jonathan 5. You will find his posts on X extremely factful and truthful and enlightening. You need to do it. I am Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. You can follow the show at Ford News Podcast. And yeah, I'm going to make a little shout out to my Florida Panthers who won the Stanley Cup. I got my championship hat on, my championship shirt on. Big parade today, which is Sunday here in South Florida, despite the torrential rains. But we will forget about sports because we got another competition we got to talk about, Jonathan. We saw a debate. I can't remember the last time something political like a debate was this talked about. And you know what? I still don't know how I feel about the outcome of the debate, which is Joe Biden having a terrible performance and Donald Trump lying through every orifice of his body. What did you make of the first presidential debate?
After rewatching this, me and you were texting back and forth during the debate and right after the debate. So after listening through it through my earpiece while at work, I decided to go home and just rewatch it. And what my final conclusion is that sure, President Biden had a horrific debate. There's no question about that at all. I think we both can agree on that. But what I feel like after just listening to the lies that Donald Trump said every minute and 21 seconds is that the real losers on this debate wasn't President Biden and wasn't Donald Trump. It was the American people. Like we had two people up there debating golf game in front of the American people.
And we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape.
We had two men bickering about different substances that has nothing to do with what the American people are facing today. And you got to hand it to Donald Trump for kind of getting President Biden to kind of go down that path. He definitely outspoke President Biden. He outpowered President Biden. He bullied President Biden. But after rewatching it, some of the substance that President Biden said was on point, and his policy was on point. But unfortunately, the majority of people are only going to watch this once, like you pointed out before, and they're not going to go back and listen to the substance that actually President Biden was talking about throughout the debate. So again, the real loser of this was the American people.
We'll talk about what this means for the Biden campaign and all of that in a second. But listen, I do agree that the big loser was the American people. But there was another loser in this whole mix that we need to just address for 1 second. And CNN, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, 2 really amazing journalists in their own right. Both very well respected from all sides, from the right, from the left, 2 really respected journalists. And they did absolutely nothing to push back on any lie that was told or to get the conversation going in the right direction when it drifted off. They literally did nothing but ask a question. At this point, CNN could have thrown an AI robot out there to do the same job that those 2 did. It was really a disservice.
Yeah, and I actually considered it a post, and I stand by that post. Is that what Jake and CNN and Dana Bash both did was journalistic malpractice. They openly now have admitted that they didn't fact check Donald Trump because they said that they wanted to leave it up to the American people. But here's the thing: is like when somebody blatantly lies right in front of you during the debate, you should have some type of pushback, and that's what I've talked about all year. I've talked about with you. I've talked about with multiple people throughout the whole year. Is that we're going to keep normalizing Donald Trump and his lies until the moment that we get pushback on his lies from every journalist that's on TV, and that goes for Fox, CNN, or all of them. But CNN was extremely disappointing to me. President Biden had a horrible debate, but CNN actually put icing on the cake for Donald Trump by just allowing these lies to continue, and the lies are long. So, but that doesn't exclude President Biden just having a horrible debate.
So, Jonathan, we have to get into what has been talked about. Listen, let's pull the curtain back. During the debate, I was texting you and our double secret editor producer Matt back and forth, and I was telling you guys this is bad for Biden. Like I was gloom and doom on our text chat, and I really knew I sensed that this debate performance by Joe Biden, with even despite the fact that Kelly O'Donnell from NBC tweeted out like halfway through that he had a cold, all this stuff, I said, listen guys, this is going bad, this is gonna be bad, just wait and see. And sure enough, as soon as the debate was done, and during the debate on X, but as soon as the debate was done, even on MSNBC, which is his left-leaning network, Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid and everybody on there were saying, listen, they might have to find a new candidate on the Democrat side. Like Joe Biden may not be the guy. And I still don't know where I stand really on that. Listen, I'm going to support whoever is running on the Democratic side of things. Whoever is facing Donald Trump, that's who I'm going to support. It could be my dog Mello, and I would still vote for him. But yeah, unfortunately, I think what the right had been pointing out about Joe Biden, as far as being old and feeble, kind of showed itself on during the debate. Now, the funny thing is, he comes out the next day in North Carolina and has a rally, and man, he is on top of his game. But unfortunately, millions of people didn't tune into that. Millions of people did tune into the debate. What do you make of the conundrum, Jonathan, of the Democratic Party thinking about what to do with Joe Biden?
I still, and we texted back and forth, I still believe that the left is overreacting. And I will stand by that. And there's statistical measures that back my claim. One is the first post-debate poll that has come out shows that President Biden actually gained 1 percentage point. There was actually a YouGov poll that just came out that stated that 55% of the American people believe that President Biden should stay in the race, while only 45% believe that Donald Trump should stay in the race. And also, President Biden was able to raise right around $27 million within 24 hours, and that's well above 30 million now. So there's statistics out there that shows the majority of the American people want President Biden to stay in. And we have to understand is that the news media and even my buddy Brian here, I believe, reacted off a cuff and reacted without settling his nerves a little bit. And it's no dog
Could have
towards Brian.
happened.
Brian
Yeah,
knows
it could have happened.
To him. Yeah. So I think people reacted too quickly. And I think MSNBC, I think CNN, I think they all reacted too quickly before they allow the American people to actually have a voice in this. And the voice right now with polling, with the two polls that I just mentioned, and the fundraising suggests that the majority of the American people don't feel as much anxiety as what other people are. And let's also talk about the couple focus groups that came out, one by CNN and one by undecided voters that were Latino, that came out and said they understand that President Biden had a horrible debate. And they even acknowledged that President Biden lost the debate. But the one thing that they said was, as an undecided voter, that they had changed their views from undecided to President Biden because they were able to actually listen to the substance and what President Biden's policies and what he was trying to say. Now, he had a couple stuttering moments But everybody knows that. But on these undecided voters, they all sway towards President Biden. So before people keep acting or vocally coming out against the President Biden for a horrible debate, let's remember this. So let's remember that President Obama had a horrific debate once again, where it was like 67-20 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, his debate in 2012 against Mitt Romney was terrible, by
Yeah.
everyone saying that. But the only problem is, Jonathan,
There
is
was a
that,
point, Brian, where he didn't even have a response. Like
right.
the articulate speaker of Obama couldn't even respond.
But the thing is, Barack Obama wasn't possibly trailing in the polls to Mitt Romney at the time. So it was a terrible performance, but he could almost afford it because he was ahead. Joe Biden and Donald Trump, by every poll, are within the margin of error. It's neck and neck. So I think that's the worry that Democrats have. Yes, incumbents have had horrible debate nights, but not when the polls are this close and literally every single vote is going to matter.
And we also haven't had a presidential nominee that has been convicted of 34 felonies,
For
has
sure.
had multiple liable lawsuits, has been found liable of sexual abuse, where the judge later clarified it as rape. And so to me, and my personal opinion, and yes, I'm getting a little aggravated with this because I can't believe in America we are behind a guy that has all these allegations and all these convictions and all these liability through civil cases, and we're standing behind this guy, and yet we're discussing a decent guy who has always had his family first and morally is so far ahead of Donald Trump, but yet we're having a discussion about his age or how close he is to the polls. And what I'm going to tell you is the polls are not an indication of President Biden. It's the indication of the American people, where we are morally and where we stand morally. And it disgusts me.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's unbelievable that we're in this situation. We should not be as a country in this situation, but here we find ourselves. I do want to get to this, which is we are here because of some pretty ridiculous situations that have happened. Donald Trump obviously has been convicted, waiting for sentencing on July 11th. There's all sorts of going on there. And, at the time when Joe Biden ran against Donald Trump, he was the only person that could beat Donald Trump. And that's why he had to run. My question is, should the Democrats, and the answer is no, but I'm just basically playing devil's advocate and throwing this out to you for you to hit this one out of the park. Okay? Should the Democrats, 4 years ago, thought to themselves, well, Joe Biden's going to be 81. Maybe we need to come up with what is Plan B. We need to have something in the kind of going on in the background so that Joe Biden could be a one-term president. He beats Donald Trump. He does great things for the country, which Joe Biden has. And then when it comes time for the re-election, we've got the power duo of, Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama, and they're going to knock it out of the park. Should that be of something that came up 4 years ago, or am I wrong there?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, there should have been or could have been a front runner that the Democrats were putting forth. But let's also understand is that I don't believe that President Biden was even going to run for reelection until Donald Trump put his hat back into the race, because
That's true.
I still firmly believe that President Biden, and by the polls that just came out too, that was released by the White House, it shows that President Biden is the only one that can actually still defeat Donald Trump, even after the post debate. And the next one closest is like 43%, which is like 7% off of Trump. So we're still living in a reality to where the only person that can beat Donald Trump is President Biden. And let me just put in a sports reference here, Brian, since you kind of like sports references. Most teams that have a championship team that has proven over 3.5 years that all they do is win through legislation for the American people, you don't tear that team down.
It's true.
You allow that
That's
team to
true.
defend their championship,
It's
and
true.
then you hold on to that championship until the moment that it's game 7, 3-3 tie, and you go into the final game and you wait and see where the chips fall. And that's kind of how I feel right now with President Biden, is that he's had our back for 3.5 years, and I'm going to have his back for the last 0.5.
All right, so let me ask you this question. If you are the Biden campaign, what do you do moving forward to get the attention in the right place so that everyone's on the same page? We're backing Biden, we're pushing forward, we're getting beyond this debate, and now we're heading towards November. What do you do if you're the Biden campaign?
Public appearances. I would get President Biden out in front of every rally, every single community event. I would have him more, speaking more to the American people. I would have him out in front of the press more, just so that people can take those worries away side. Because I can tell you, there was people, um, really large accounts and really smart people on X that were calling for President Biden to basically remove themselves. But after they seen the post debate celebration with the Harris and Biden campaign, it kind of eased them a little bit. Then when they seen the Waffle House where he
Waffle
was
House.
interacting with the guests or with the guest inside of the Waffle House, it kind of eased them a little bit. Then when even you seen the debate the previous day, you were like, man, that's the President Biden we should have had. When, in his own words, President Biden said, I may walk slower, I may talk slower, I may think slower, but the one thing that I do is I know how to get the job done, which he's arguably has done through the 3.5 years, being one of the uh, most legislation passed since FDR. And then he said the one thing he knows is, as a Biden, is that when you get knocked down, you get back up. And that's exactly what I would do if I was the Democratic Party. I would get President Biden out there at every moment I possibly can.
Yeah, amazing. And in your reference, your allusion to what you do in sports when you have a championship team and it keeps winning, you continue to support that team. You don't break that team up. That's the team you want to put out on the floor, out on the field, out on the ice. You want to continue. The
And let's
Panthers,
understand, this
yeah,
isn't just President Biden. This is Harrison. This is every single staff member that he's hired, everyone on his administration. This is about Secretary Pete Buttigieg. This is about everybody that he has designed and had the wits to put with him. Because as a leader, and when you lead, and I've led 400, 500, 600 people at a time, it's not always about being the smartest person, but putting smarter people around you. And that's why today, or yesterday, excuse me, yesterday, Mark Cuban was asked the question, and if you don't know who Mark Cuban is, go back to Dallas Mavericks era when he owned them. But if you go back and watch what Mark Cuban said, is the difference between Donald Trump and President Biden is he would not hire Donald Trump as a CEO, but even today he would still hire President Biden as the CEO.
you bring up an amazing point, which is everyone thinks about the presidency as a singular person. But really, what the presidency means is thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the federal government that come with that administration. And it's those people that are really in charge of the day to day operations of the federal government and the people that get things done. If you don't think that Joe Biden doesn't have a much better grasp of what people to surround himself with than Donald Trump, you need to take yourself out and think about things.
Yeah, and I would also encourage people that I would want somebody that speaks and thinks slowly with precision than somebody that acts out of behavior and instincts. And what, even to the debate when I watched it back, President Biden at times even showed where he is thinking um, about the right words or about what to say or where his stance is. And that's the person that I want running the presidency, other than somebody that's lied 1.2 every minute. Like every answer he gave, there was a lie in there. And this is where we are as an American people. And it's so sad that we have the news media that is more caught up on President Biden's age, which is similar to Donald Trump's, and not the fact that Donald Trump lied so many times to the American people. And that's how we end up with Donald Trump. It's because the news media has continued to normalize him, and they're doing the same thing they did now than what they did in 2016.
Yeah, we had the New York Times and the New Yorker call for Biden to leave the race, but we did get the Philadelphia Inquirer to call for Donald Trump to leave the race. So at least somebody has a grasp of who the real crook is here in this presidential race. All right, we're going to take a break. We will get back to the debate and the amount of lies that Donald Trump told during the debate. We will get into that. We've got plenty more on the other side. You're listening and watching Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJonathan5. I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. Follow the show at Ford News Podcast. Please, wherever you are listening to this right now, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get notified when new episodes drop. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell that lets you know when new episodes drop. We need your support to make sure that people know the facts and the truth. That's what we do here at Ford News. We had another decision made last week in the Chevron case, where 6-3, the conservative judges basically ruled that the Chevron case that was decided in 1984, which basically gave governmental agencies like the FDA and the Environmental Protection Agency the right to kind of, put into effect regulations to help the safety of the American people. And now, because of this decision, because of the overturning of the Chevron decision, the power is now lies with the courts. So if the EPA wants to put in a regulation about X, Y, and Z to protect the American people, rather than the courts being able to defer to those agencies, those governmental agencies, which employ all of the experts in that matter, now the courts have the upper hand and can overturn that regulation if Congress hasn't already passed a law on something in that realm. It's kind of mind-boggling that basically what we're doing is we're allowing the courts to decide what's good for us and not the experts.
And we're making courts like you just said, an expert in a certain field that they probably have no idea how it even operates.
Correct.
And you said before, like they used to defer these down to the federal agencies for their input. But my thought process is just going through this is how many of these court cases will be backlogged going forward just for a medicine to get approved or that could be challenged or an environmental concern to be taken up by the courts. And then here we are putting the weight of making sure we progress forward in the hands of the current Congress or any Congress, especially the Congress we have right now, to make legislation into law, whether the least productive in U.S. history. I just kind of reread back through this, and this is just mind-boggling on how the courts, who for the past 50 years has always went to the agencies who are the experts in this field, are now considering themselves the experts. And it just blows my complete mind that this is where we are in the current state of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, listen, I understand that the right in this country wants less regulation on businesses. I get that. I get that that's what their platform is. But to think on Earth 1 or Earth 2, as Nicole Wallace talks about on MSNBC, that the courts should be the arbiters of these sorts of things rather than the experts who spend their entire lives in these fields like healthcare or environmental protection or drug safety or anything else, is just absolutely mind-boggling. And now it's going to be up to Congress to pass some sort of laws to make sure that the American people are protected and that there can be regulation that keeps us all safe. Because if not, it's going to be up to the courts. And if the Supreme Court stays the way it is at 6-3, and God forbid Donald Trump gets reelected, forget about it. There's just going to be no protections for the American people anymore. The federal agencies which we rely upon to keep us safe are going to be more powerless than they've ever been. It's unbelievable.
And we can go back through deregulations on how they're one of the key factors in the Great Depression, along with um, inflation, supply and demand problems, and the housing market. But deregulating certain industries or a broad deregulation it would be, in my opinion, horrific going forward, because that's what protects the American people. And you're right. What this decision does is it uh, leaves it up to the courts and takes the federal government out of it. And to me, this just reads more of like there's supposed to be a separation of power between different branches of the government. And to me, it just seemed like the courts are trying to now overreach into the boundaries of what was once held by the federal government or those agencies. And the courts are now trying to kind of hold some of that power that was once held by a different branch of the government.
Well, listen, the three branches of the government are supposed to be three equal branches, right, of the
Hmm.
government. But what we've seen as the right has taken over the judiciary is that this has become a more powerful branch of the government, having an impact on regulation and deregulation, but also a woman's right to choose and her health care and everything else. It's just the courts are getting involved in everything. And this is not what the framers wanted, but it's what the right wants. And it's kind of disgusting, and it's only going to get worse unless the election goes the right way in November. Jonathan, I don't think he's slept since the debate because he's been Ford fact checking Donald Trump and everything that was said in that debate since then, and he needs to get it all off his chest. Jonathan needs to Ford fact check Donald Trump's 7 million debate lies. So we're going to do our favorite segment, the Ford fact check. We're going to let Jonathan just go. Just Ford fact check the heck out of Donald Trump. We're going to do that right after this on Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJonathan5. I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. Follow the show at Ford News Podcast. Subscribe to the podcast where you're listening to the podcast. And go hit up the YouTube channel. And if you're watching the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell, do all that stuff. And you know what? Make a nice comment. That would help us as well. All right, Jonathan. It's time to dig into Donald Trump's lies in that debate. Let's Ford fact check him.
I've never seen the amount of misleading or lies and shuts in such a short span that my head was literally going to explode. Donald Trump made a misleading claim about insulin, that he was the reason why the price of insulin was reduced during his term on an executive order. And then he also, other people like to mention about the fact that President Biden rescinded that executive order. But here's what we have to know, that the truth of that is that the executive order did not cover a broad enough people on Medicaid or Medicare. It didn't cover enough of them because President Trump's executive order allowed the pharmaceutical companies to negotiate the deals, when which what President Biden's deal with the executive order is gave that insulin price to everyone, because it no longer allowed pharmaceutical companies to negotiate that deal. It basically mandated that particular insulin at what, $35.
And I think under Donald Trump's order, I think only one pharmaceutical company took advantage of that to lower their prices.
Yes. So, and that's where it also, like in this executive order, and they kind of, President Donald Trump during his last of his administration walked away from this deal because the pharmaceutical companies were not coming to the negotiating table at all for him. And with President Biden again, he mandated this through his executive order for all pharmaceuticals to basically honor the $35 insulin price for especially the most vulnerable people in America, which is our elderly. There's also a few more, like he also indicated that the border was never more secure than under his administration, which is, if you take out the brief period of the pandemic, is simply not true. And what we've seen in the last year of uh, border crossing or undocumented immigrants coming across was an increase of 54% in his last year in office. So the notion that he's making that the border was completely shut down during his administration is false, because the only way he was able to even shut down the border for a brief period was through Title 42, which is basically a state of emergency he declared. And that state of emergency started when people weren't traveling or were completely locked down, all the countries. Of course, border control is going to slow down. He also made the claim that Roe v. Wade, the overturning of it, was supported by Republicans and Democrats alike, which is simply not true. 70% of Americans feel that the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that the Supreme Court got it wrong. So he was blatantly false on just those few things. The one that is the most disgusting, that me and you were talking about a little bit off the side, is that he claimed that Democrats in some Democratic areas or areas ran by Democrats, I believe is what his word was, is that abortions are allowed after birth.
Because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at
Which is simply just not true. What we like to call that is murder. But we talked about it off the air, because I was kind of thinking about where he would get some of these facts from. But then we learned, Brian, and why don't you go ahead and tell them what we basically learned of where he is actually manipulating the truth of this.
Yeah, so for those of you out there, I've been in the media for 25 years, but my day job at the current moment is working for medical practice. So I know a little bit about this stuff. And a lot of people will know that when you go to the doctor, when you go to the hospital, when you go to get anything done medical, they have to use diagnosis codes, right? You go in for a cough, there's a code for that. There's a code for everything. And when you go to the hospital or your OBGYN, if you're a woman and because of a miscarriage, there is a diagnosis code for a miscarriage. And if you really want to get into the weeds, the ICD-10 code for a miscarriage is 003.9. And what this is it's when you come in for a miscarriage, but what it is, the definition is, what the verbiage is for that ICD-10 code is complete or unspecified spontaneous abortion without complication. It's a medical classification as listed by the WHO as it relates to pregnancy and childbirth. So basically, what it's basically saying is the body aborted the baby. That's what a miscarriage is, and that's the verbiage in the ICD-10 code. That does not mean that murder is taking place, that after a baby is born or what have you, that there's going to be a murder taking place on that. It's just so stupid, but guarantee that some aide, someone that got into Donald Trump's ear and said, oh, well, there's this code and it says abortion and you could use this in the debate. It's just the most mind-boggling, stupid thing I've ever heard said. My wife, who is, just not a person that yells at the TV and gets all emotional about that, she was going nuts. She was going crazy. The dogs were barking. They knew it was a lie. It was absolute stupidity by Donald Trump.
93% of all abortion are within the first trimester, and most of the late term abortions are women who have already made plans to carry that baby to full term, have already bought gifts, who have already started to set up a nursery, who have already, of course, been emotionally attached to the prospects of having the baby, and then get this devastating news that Trump feels the need to make political, and he's done this repeatedly. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over a couple of the just a couple more here of other lies. But to me, that was the most disgusting lie that he told out of all of them. How he likes to manipulate people, and it's all a con to him. But we're going to go over a couple more, just like he tried to blame President Biden for inflation. And if anybody that has looked up the cause of inflation, it's caused by out of control spending, and it's caused by supply and demand. And what we've seen in the even President Biden and Donald Trump's administration, is that to stimulate the economy, the spending was completely out of control. You can all admit that. But that happened for both administrations. That when you increase spending so rapidly, while supply and demand is the supply is lower than what demand is, it causes inflation, and that's what we see now is in the face. And by far, we're doing better than any other country. At I think the last report came out that we're at 3.4% inflation, and the federal government considers any inflation around 2% to be healthy for the economy because it encourages GDP growth. I encourage everyone to go through just the crazy amount of lies. It was well over 30 for Donald Trump, just like Trump overstated how much food prices have risen due to inflation. He stated that basically they're quadrupled. When I had actually talked to retail experts, where my expertise used to be, they estimate that at the peak, the prices increased anywhere, and this is across the board. They're taking an average across the board, anywhere from 17 to 20%, which that is also drastically declined. We can also talk about the difference between inflation and what we like to call price gouging, which is what we're seeing a lot more of right now, is the actual price gouging and not necessarily the inflation of the economy, when we have corporations recording record profits, which is something that the Democratic Party put forth in legislation that was turned down by the Democratic Party. Trump also wrongly claimed that prior to the pandemic, he created the greatest economy in history. Donald Trump promised a GDP growth of between 4 and 5% with his tax cut for the wealthiest Americans, and he never came close to that. And right now, under President Biden, we're actually seeing historic GDP growth. President Biden has been extremely successful at putting people in place that are going to uh, do and pass great legislation for the American people. And coming out of the pandemic, which I believe Trump failed historically, of just giving the American people the truth and not downplaying it. But the amount of lies, the recent estimate was that every minute and 21 seconds, there was a lie from Donald Trump. And we're talking about a man that through his presidency lied at a record between 30 and 35,000 times. That's over 100 lies a day. A day.
Have you noticed the trending topic on X called Black Jobs? Have you seen that one? And if you haven't,
Yeah,
so
you would just
basically,
like to know what a black job is.
well, here's the thing is so Donald Trump basically said that undocumented workers, migrants coming across the
Mhm.
border are taking black jobs. And then Marco Rubio goes on television and the anchor said, "Well, what's a black job?" And he said, "Well, it's the low wage jobs." And that's a foot and mouth situation. So now you have, and rightly so, you have a bunch of black professionals who have great jobs saying, "Hey, I'm going to my black job today as a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, whatever," because hey, guess just like everyone else, hey, black people have great jobs too. I just can't.
I literally heard it, and when I heard him say it, I literally was like a gasp of air, just like, Oh my God, I can't believe this is coming from a nominee of the Republican Party. And we all knew what he meant, that he meant low income jobs.
Right.
Um, that's why even when I say, like, what do they mean about black jobs? Are they socializing or identifying black people with poverty? Because that's not the case.
No,
Because
yeah,
actually,
that's what they're doing.
white people take up more poverty than what actually black
Right.
people do.
Yeah.
And then did you also see? I'm going to bring you up on the spot. Did you actually see the clip from the barbershop?
Rocky's barbershop in Atlanta says he feels he was misled by a campaign event for former President Trump the day before the debate. Rocky Jones tells our Karis Belger he thought his Buckhead shop was just hosting a forum for black businesses, but he says he never expected to fade into the realm of politics.
Donald Trump and his surrogates used it as a campaign type roundtable with the black voters. And what they were making it seem like it was black people supporting Trump at this roundtable, and it was a big campaign thing. The black gentleman that owns the barber shop actually came out the following day and said it was a big con.
Started with a text, then it went to a call because I was actually out the country, and just me agreeing to do a black small business, round table. I thought it was like something real private.
It was anything but. Rocky, along with black business owners from across metro Atlanta, crammed into his shop, along with Trump surrogates like Ben Carson. But it wasn't all shop talk.
Thinking about black business in Atlanta, small black businesses in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, so when are we going to start talking about this?
He says a call from former President Trump during the event cut deep.
Why is the ex-president calling somebody in my barbershop? This has nothing to do with small black businesses.
And he was left with a lot more than razor burn.
We had some calls. Thursday, we definitely got some calls, some backlash, some angry people that don't know me, and I have to deal with that. I have no involvement in politics. We don't even talk politics in my barbershop. It's all sports. Commend everybody to vote, but that's your business. I don't tell you what to do.
The number of customers, he says, has trimmed down, but he hopes the shock will fade and he can keep helping his community.
That it was actually supposed to be a roundtable discussing black businesses and black small businesses, which under the Biden administration is at record levels of new small black businesses starting up in the United States, along with record low unemployment for black communities. But he went on to say that the room quickly filled with Trump surrogates, and Trump called in, which he didn't believe was part of it, and Ben Carson and all these people came in. But he basically is admitting that he was part or wasn't part of, but was brought into this con by Donald Trump to show black support when it wasn't supposed to even be a campaign ad at all.
Of course. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. All right. That'll do it for us this week. Jonathan, it's a big week.
Last thing is
Go ahead.
I want to send out a special thank you to all the support that we've received here on Ford News Podcast and on the YouTube channel from my followers on X who have been extremely loyal to the podcast and to Brian and myself as far as listening in. And I know that we don't necessarily get a time to tweet out or post out every single time thanking you guys, but I want to personally thank you guys for the 121,000 followers. Brian, another statistic that I just like to throw out at you since I came out backing President Biden on X, I've literally gained 500 more followers. So that's just another statistic that you could put into the realm of others. But the fact is that we have the best followers here on Ford News Podcast and on X and on YouTube and everywhere. And we just want to continue to develop and grow this with you all behind us and beside us along the way. And also a special thanks to our editor who edits these videos for us, and just like us, he's basically doing it for peanuts.
Yep.
So so thank you to him as well.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
Next week's. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. Big week behind us, big week ahead of us. As always, we will keep it churning. Thank you for watching and listening to Ford News. We'll see you next time.